My personal email account, all my emails, all my work-related emails, they're not mine. They belong to the State Department. The vast majority of my work emails went to government employees at their government addresses. I want those emails out. And obviously, it hasn't worked out that way. You know, I want the American people to learn as much as we can. This didn't seem like an issue.
Until perhaps now, or maybe yesterday, things heating up here. Great place to start our roundtable as we continue to look at the Hillary Clinton email situation.
And rejoining us once again is radio host and columnist for the Washington Times, Tim Constantine. Thanks so much for rejoining us.
Hey.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
So, Clinton confidant Sidney Blumenthal testified before the Benghazi committee Tuesday morning. Blumenthal worked in the White House under President Bill Clinton and is a longtime friend and advisor to the Clinton family. Now, the committee announced Monday night that it had received 60 new emails from Blumenthal documenting conversations between him and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. But Congressman Trey Gowdy says the emails were simply forwarded by Blumenthal to Clinton and were written by a former high-ranking CIA official. So why the discrepancy here, Tim?
Well, either way, they weren't turned over. Congress, Trey Gowdy and the Select Committee on Benghazi hadn't seen them, regardless of who originally authored them. They hadn't been turned over. So either Hillary didn't turn them over to the State Department and lied, or the State Department is lying to us. Somebody has not been straight with the Select Committee on Benghazi. The thing I laugh at, in that clip you play with Hillary saying, I want to get these out as soon as I can. If that's true, then why did she turn over all her emails, 60,000 pages worth of emails, in printed form instead of electronic form?
Well, she's certainly
How
not
could that
acting like
possibly speed up the process?
Well, she liked to talk about yesterday a lot. Maybe she's taken a yesterday kind of tactic with the hard copies of the emails. Let's bring in David Goodfriend, who was a former deputy staff secretary under President Bill Clinton. And David, as we look at this, you know, we heard Hillary Clinton in the past say that I turned over all my emails, but for maybe a few that dealt with personal issues between me and Bill.
The wedding.
Chelsea's wedding. But now we see these emails coming to light via Sidney Blumenthal. It raises a lot of question marks.
Well, first of all, I apologize for the background noise, you guys. I'm up on Capitol Hill at the moment, where a lot is going on, as you might have read.
Right.
Yes.
But I will say this: I'm a lawyer by training, and I know that in any litigation, that the first sort of salvos back and forth are over precisely this: document production. Did you produce it? Did you not produce it? Here's what you asked for. No, that's not what I asked for. And there's nothing very strange about that. It's typical of any major litigation where documents are really at the root of the evidentiary gathering process. In this case, what I focus on here is I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, the difference between Hillary Clinton submitting emails to the State Department and the State Department submitting emails to the committee, the Select Committee. Here, I get the sense that it's the latter. We're talking about what the State Department did or did not produce. And I think that's certainly open to question. Are they doing it right? Are they doing it wrong? I think there's a big difference between that and what Hillary Clinton produces, which she says is everything that she believes is relevant. Now, I say she believes is relevant. Her attorneys believe is relevant. It is certainly within the realm of possibility that the Select Committee says, actually, we think there's other stuff that you need to produce that is relevant, that is not subject to privilege, and we want it. And I would expect that to happen throughout this process, and it's perfectly legitimate. It's perfectly in keeping with what usually happens with the document production process.
All right, we'll
Tim,
see.
I can see that Tim's ready to say something.
But this isn't a usual document production. This is Hillary Clinton saying, I will turn over everything that pertains to my job as Secretary of State. There's nowhere to parse there. Either you are turning over everything, and certainly correspondence having to do with Libya would be included in that. We're not talking about her wedding. We're not talking about her grandmother or her mother. We're not talking about correspondence with her husband. We're talking about correspondence on Libya. That clearly has to do with her job as Secretary of State.
David, why not just turn over her personal server?
Well, because there's a lot on there that she thinks is none of our business, and that's fair.
But
this
shouldn't
is America.
she leave it up to the committee to make that decision?
This is completely in keeping with how litigation and other investigations work. You start with a request, and then that request is either honored or it's not. If it's honored, That's the end of the matter.
But she's
Someone
here.
says, well,
but David,
actually, you
she's
haven't been
saying she's going to
responsive
honor
on
that
it.
request, and yet drip by drip, every step along the way, it appears as though the request, even though she says she's going to honor it, has not been honored.
No, I
David
fundamentally
keeps saying
disagree
this
with
is
what you just
typical
said.
of any
I
litigation. The only thing that is
fundamentally
typical here is the way the Clintons say one thing and do something different.
All right.
Oh, that's baloney. She's turned it over to the State Department. Your beef is with the State Department, so go talk to them.
All right,
No,
we're
she's-
gonna
she
talk more
deleted
about what happened
30,000
with
emails,
Isa
David.
and Trey Gowdy coming up after the break. We're gonna ask both of you to stick around. David, you're breaking up a little bit, so hopefully we can fine tune that and get a better signal there. But still, a lot of opinions out there over what's going on. And
It seems though she's painted herself in a corner by what she said prior to this, and now more information comes out when Blumenthal has it. A lot of questions. We'll continue our conversation right after this short commercial break.
And back for part two of our roundtable is David Goodfriend, former Deputy Staff Secretary for President Clinton and President of Goodfriend Government Affairs. Joining us via phone, also radio host and columnist for the Washington Times, Tim Constantine. Thank you both for sticking around.
Thank you.
All right,
you.
we want to let you guys continue the conversation because it was getting heated. And of course, that's when we always have to hit a commercial break. But we were talking about Hillary Clinton. Who last left off? Do you recall?
Well, it's kind of
Well,
going
I
back
think-
and forth, but I want to talk to David because it does feel like, David, if what you're saying is true, and I do kind of agree with Tim here, this is not any other legal proceeding, but based on what Hillary Clinton herself has said about wanting to disclose this information, she's painted herself in kind of a rhetorical corner.
She said that she produced everything that she had to the State Department. And I think what we're having here is a little bit of, you guys want to argue to the source. The State Department is handling the document production to the committee. And I think if I stand by the statement that I made earlier before the break, that in any situation like this, whether it's litigation or a committee with subpoena power, there's always a back and forth between the people who want documents and the people who are producing them. And to answer the question, why doesn't she just turn over her entire server? I would no more turn over all of my records to a group of people that just not that long ago sent a love letter to the Ayatollah of Iran to talk about foreign policy. I don't trust these people, and neither should she. But she will follow the law, and she will produce what is required. And what is required is anything relevant to the investigation. Now, there will be more back and forth. The committee will say, I want more documents about X, or I think there are other documents about Y. Her attorney may say, no, that's privileged, or he may say, no, that's irrelevant. That is how this works. So I know that there...
The problem here, David, is you're saying what is relevant to the investigation, but that's relevant only according to Hillary Clinton and her team. We can't blame the State Department for her deleting 30,000 emails, for her making the choice what was relevant and what wasn't. She was Secretary of State of the United States, a public official, and as such, she owes the public access to those records, not a decision on her own what works and what doesn't.
Again, your dispute at the moment is with the State Department, not Hillary Clinton. They are the ones who are producing
No, it
documents.
isn't. They didn't get 30,000 emails from Hillary Clinton.
All right, guys, let's
right.
leave it there because
My
there's
mistake
other...
is not with the
Agree to
State
disagree.
Well, we can pick this back up because we know it's not going away, but there's some
Yeah.
other topics we wanted to discuss as well, including a vote yesterday in the U.S. Senate. They overwhelmingly voted to ban torture. It's going to have a big impact. But remember when President Obama said this? We don't have the clip, but President Obama said a while back that we tortured some folks, and everybody remembers that kind of off-the-cuff remark, but it surprised a lot of folks. Then he signed an executive order banning torture. But yesterday, the U.S. Senate chose to take it a step further. David, why do you think the Senate at this particular time chose to make this decision?
John McCain. Senator John McCain is somebody who actually can take to the well of the Senate and say, I was a prisoner of war and I was tortured and I am chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, and I say that banning torture in this way is good for America's fighting men and women, because forbid somebody else is in the position I was in as a prisoner of war. If our country has in any way legally sanctioned torture, then it's doomsday for our prisoners of war. He has the moral authority, he has the legislative authority, he has the stature to do it, and I think he is a hero.
And then the ball is in the House's court, Tim, when you look at this, though, this also comes on the heels of that controversial Senate report by Dianne Feinstein as well. Is there any correlation between the timing of that release and what we're seeing now?
oh, you know, nothing happens by coincidence in this town, but just in general, I agree completely with David. You have a unique situation here. You know, we watch television and you see fictional characters like Jack Bauer have to make the decision whether or not to torture somebody. We're not talking fiction here. We're talking John McCain lived that. And for him to be able to stand up in the well of the Senate and talk about that, everybody knows his history. There is no one else who could make the case the way he did.
All right, Tim and David, we have one final topic that we want to make sure we get to. Remember, at first it was California talking about the dangers or taking on the dangers of those sugary drinks, and it was New York, and it took aim at sodium, and now we have this. Take a listen.
They've made a decision and finalized a determination that partially hydrogenated oils, the primary dietary source of artificial trans fat in processed foods, are not generally recognized as safe for use in human food.
And that was White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest speaking on the trans fat ban at yesterday's White House briefing. Conservatives say Obama's plan to ban trans fat limits American freedom. Tim, your thoughts?
You know, in general, I'm not big on the nanny state. The idea that you're going to limit how much soda I drink by making the cup smaller is kind of silly. But in this case, this is a man-made substance that really isn't good for anybody. On this one, I happen to think they're right. It's in the best interest of the health of the people of the United States.
All right, David, your thoughts?
Well, it's a lot like the debate over tobacco. At that time, some people said that was too much government, saying that you had to have a label on cigarette packs, that it could kill you. But this is a similar example. It's in the public interest. It's good for health.
All right, David Goodfriend, Tim Constantine, thank you both for joining us here for our roundtable. Always good to have you. We'll be right back.